Welcome.
Pleasure to see you, Patrice. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good. So we're about roughly 6,000 people listening to us. So I have a few questions, if you may. I hope that they will give a lot of value for them. So,
of course,
Simon, let's start by referring to one of your best sellers. The start with why. How great leaders inspire everyone to take action. I know it's one of your old bestseller, but I think it's also used with many people. It's a principle that is compelling for me as a leader, but also because I'm convinced that at Fortinet, we have a great vision to pursue. The vision we have at Fortinet is making possible the digital world that everyone can trust. So it's go beyond just selling product or services. In today's context, our role as cybersecurity expert is quite critical to protect society from cyber risk and attacks. So I lead the team, and we want my sales team, of course, to be successful, but it's go beyond simply doing businesses. We want them to, of course, find a purpose or at least inspiration on their job. And I'm sure having you with us today will give us a great insight into how this make it happen. So my first question will be, how do we balance the demand of meeting sales target goals with the purpose of mindset to serve the need of our customer?
So what I think is so interesting about those two things is they're not mutually exclusive. And the sales goals should fit within the purpose. One of the big mistakes that I think companies make is they think of the sales goals as the end all be all, and they have no higher purpose, no higher contribution other than the goal itself. And so we overuse war and sports analogies to hit that goal, right? It's all very finite thinking, as if it's the end. I like to think of business much more like a lifestyle. It's much more like being healthy, right? The purpose is to be healthy, for example. And there are many things we have to do to be healthy. We have to eat right, we have to exercise, we have to get enough sleep, we have to nurse our personal relationships. There's probably 30 other things as well. It's the same in business. We have to have good marketing, we have to have good leadership, good product, good sales force, all of these things. And it's hard to maintain all of those things at very high level all the time. They sort of wax and wane. The opportunity is to work hard. It's an infinite game to keep those things going all the time. And it is perfectly acceptable to set arbitrary goals within that context. Now, most sales goals are arbitrary. Somebody sat in an office and said, we're going to hit this number by this date. And so we all went and did it, right? Which, like, if you want to live a healthy lifestyle, you say, I want to lose X amount of weight by X date. And you do all the things you have to do to lose that weight. You exercise, you eat right, you weigh yourself every day, you count the metrics. Metrics are very, very healthy. People like metrics. If you think about running a marathon without mile markers, it's actually unnerving. We need to be able to count our progress to feel like we're moving forward. It's a basic human need. And so we count, we look down at the scale every day. Some days we feel good, some days we feel bad. And we hit our goal on the right day, we feel amazing, like hitting a sales goal. But here's the problem. You have to keep exercising and eating right for the rest of your life. You don't get to stop doing those things. And the problem in business is we treat that goal like it's the end, except we have to keep working on all those things, the good leadership, the good sales training, the good culture. It has to continue. What I think is more interesting than hitting the goal is what happens if you miss the goal. So if you look down at that scale and you miss your goal, you miss the arbitrary number by that arbitrary date, you know what happens? Nothing. Nothing happens. In fact, because you've been working hard, you're actually much healthier now than where you started. You just didn't predict the right day and the right time. And I think what's very, very important, if we try and contextualize goal setting within a purpose-driven company, is to recognize that those numbers and those dates are not absolute. And if you look at the trend data, I think it's really important to look at trend data, because there are many teams who, their sales are up, their sales are down throughout the year. It's like a roller coaster. They have a big promotion and a big sales push right at the end of the year. They hit their goal. And for some reason, we think that that was good. But if you look at another team where everything is really steady and really good, morale is high and things, but they just happen to miss the goal, but clearly they're going to hit it 2 months after, clearly, we give that team nothing. And so I think it's okay to have the goals. It's good to count things. But I think as we move forwards and become more purpose-driven, infinite-minded companies, we have to start including trend data to understand that it's contextualized. Like this goal is designed to advance something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think I agree in the sense that you need to set some goal because that's also drive direction. Otherwise, people are a bit lost. So, but it's not necessarily the ultimate objective. And putting the people in motion, and as you say, training and doing sports and cycling, you have to train, and it's a hard job. So and then at some point, yeah, you reach some summit, and then you're happy, but it's just an ongoing process. So very good insight. So I really appreciate that. So and maybe talking about as you know, the main topics of our sales kickoff is about elevate leaders. And we're not talking about a rank or grade perspective, but rather more about how and who act as a leader. So I'd like to get your insight on how do you define your leaders?
So I think leadership is one of the most misunderstood subjects in business, quite frankly. Very often when we talk about leaders, we're talking about rank or hierarchy. But you and I both know many people throughout our careers who at very high levels of companies who are not leaders. We do as they tell us because they have authority over us, but we would never trust them or choose to follow them. And you and I both know people at low levels of organizations who have no formal rank or authority, and yet they've made the choice to look after the person to the left of them and to look after the person to the right of them, and we trust them and would follow them anywhere. Leadership fundamentally is the responsibility to see those around us rise. And we hope that you obey and exhibit the qualities of good leadership when you have a position of leadership, but you can obey and pursue good leadership at any rank. Leadership has nothing to do with the rank or position. It's the responsibility to see those around us rise. That's what makes someone a leader.
Yeah. So what will be potentially as a tip for the different population we have? As I agree with you, it's not just the position. Everybody can be a leaders, but and maybe the mistake that they should avoid.
Well, one of the big mistakes is to think that it's all about you. Human beings are social animals. If we could do everything by ourselves, we wouldn't need friends and we wouldn't need a team. We wouldn't need coworkers. We could just do everything ourselves. And at the end of the day, we can't do everything ourselves. And so it's understanding that you're a part of a machine. And the more you help keep that machine well-oiled, which means open and clear communication, setting clear guidelines and expectations, being able to resolve conflict in a healthy manner, things like this help keep the machine working, and that the people who support you will be there for you because they know that you would be there for them. And so what great leaders do is they work to be there for their team members or those in their care. Remember, when we're junior in our companies, when we first join the company will give us tons and tons of training so that we'll be good at our jobs, right? And some people get advanced degrees, engineers and the like will get advanced degrees so that they'll be good at their job. And if you're really good at your job, eventually you'll get promoted to a position where you're now responsible for the people who do the job you used to do. But we very rarely give any kind of training or sort of apprenticeship on how to be a leader. And just because somebody was good at their job doesn't mean they're good at leading other people at being that good at that job. A good salesperson doesn't necessarily make a good sales manager, for example. There are different skill sets. And so one of the things we have to remember when we occupy a position of leadership is we now have the responsibility to see those in our team, do well, to help them work to their natural best. It's not just about us and how good we are or how good we were when we used to do the job they used to do. It's a different skill set and a different mindset.
Well, I think I agree. And I think you answer a bit of maybe the next question more about the management. So the people, they are in this position of leaders, what in fact they can do for supporting and encourage others to act as a leader. What will be your suggestion here? That's more like management.
On how to become a leader, you mean?
Yeah.
Say it again.
No, I say more from the management perspective for the people they're already in the position to be a leader, as appointed as a leader. what they can do to support and encourage, in fact, the others to act as the leaders. So more management.
Great question. Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So one of the muscles that good leaders develop is, believe it or not, empathy. So what does empathy look and sound like in a corporate environment? It doesn't mean walking around crying. It's not what it means. It means being able to see another person as a human being, not just as a cog in a machine. So, for example, here's a fairly common scenario in a business. A manager walks into somebody's office and says, "You've missed your numbers this quarter. We've had this conversation three times before, and if you don't hit your numbers the next quarter, I don't know what's going to happen." Right? That's a fairly normal scenario. If you inject empathy into that scenario, it goes a little differently. The manager walks into the office or calls them up and says, "You've missed your numbers for the third time in a row. We've had this conversation before. Are you okay? I'm worried about you. What's going on?" That's a muscle that has to be developed, where that person feels that someone has their back, that someone cares for them. And that pays back in spades over the course of time. And people will give their blood, sweat, and tears to serve and give back and follow a leader who they believe sees them as a human being and cares about their well-being as a human being, not just if they're hitting their numbers.
Yeah, I agree. So I think it's not often where you can get such of kind of advice or training, because typically management is about process and skill, not too much about talking about empathy and how to act. We are talking about human people. So do you know where potentially your reps can find this? Is more a job from, of course, the management, but more HR or maybe advisor from outside should come? What's your view here?
Well, good leaders are students of leadership, and they're fascinated by the subject. They read books, they watch talks, they're constantly talking about the subject. And companies do have a responsibility, I believe, to offer some of that training. Good leadership training includes skills like, and I mentioned some of these before, how to resolve conflict, how to have an effective confrontation. What happens if something goes wrong or somebody did something badly? Like, how do you tell them in a way that they'll hear that information rather than just be defensive? How to have an effective confrontation, how to have a difficult conversation, how to listen, active listening, where you listen for meaning rather than listening for words. These are learnable, teachable skills. And yes, whatever training department or HR facility you have should provide that training as you make your way through the formal rank structure, so that you are equipped for the new job you have, just like we would if you were in a technical job. So yeah, that's part of it. But also people who like I said, who aspire to be leaders, they do their own studying. One of the things that I've seen very successful in many companies, and it's very inexpensive, in fact, it's very close to free, is a book club, where somebody says, "I want to be a better leader." They choose to read a particular book, and people volunteer and they read 2 or 3 chapters a week and get together at lunchtime or whatever on Friday after work, and they talk about the chapters, and they just have a book club. And slowly but surely that book club grows. And then finally somebody says, "You know what, this was such a good book. I bet I could teach a class to other people about the subject of this book." And before you know it, you have a homegrown leadership training program. I've seen that work very, very, very successfully. And it's very, very simple to implement a book club.
Yeah, very good advice. And I think it's a good idea we'll try to implement. I think I agree that the challenge is like leaders really, you see leaders where they are more against the I would say difficulty. So it's not like when everything goes well, because that's also an easy job. It's also, especially for the salespeople, when they are engaging with customer and get about more like challenging in their authority or adversary. So I think it's really where I think we see the difference between real leaders and, of course, people who just like a bit not prepared and may not be able to object against customers. So I think, it's part about the risk and where we should help. And we do see those guys performing because they are able to turn this difficult conversation to a more positive outcome.
Look, every salesperson who's worth their salt knows that sales is in large part about relationships. It's not just a list of prices and product attributes. That's when you've become a commodity. And every good salesperson knows that if you have a strong relationship with a client, with a customer, and the company screws up, you get a delivery time wrong, or let's say your price is slightly higher than a comparable product that's open on the market, that's available on the market. It's the relationship that client, that customer wants to keep doing business with you, even if it's a higher price, and even if you screw up now and then, because they know fundamentally you're good people, that you have their backs, and you're going to try for them. Like every salesperson knows that, right? Well, if we know that that's the case with our customers and our clients, then the same logic applies to our colleagues, which is it's the relationships. If you want to guarantee that someone's loyal, if you want to guarantee that someone's going to be there for you, put in that extra mile, then it's the quality of the relationship. It's the exact same skill. So this is what's, I think actually salespeople have a head start in terms of leadership training, because they know how to build relationships. Now just apply that internally.
Yeah, I think it's I agree, and that maybe also land to a bit the question around how to engage with the C-level. All of our sales, of course, as we elevate a bit the discussion, especially when we talk about cybersecurity, we're moving from pure kind of product discussion, technical discussion, to a bit more, a strategic discussion. And then you have to move up on the organization, and that's where you have to have the people engaging with the C-level organization. So, and you know that I will say C-level or C-suite does not want to make time for sales rep because they consider not necessarily valuable for them. They want to meet with advisor who understand their business issue. So what will be your advice here for my sales team to how to communicate with the C-level customer and how they can build trust with them?
So one of the things that I learned from Jack Daly, who's a famous sales coach, is he said the average number of questions asked in a bad sales meeting is about 7, where the average number of questions asked in a good sales meeting is about 32. And so it's not coming in and just throwing up, product attributes or what we can give you, because that's all about you. It's about learning to listen and learning to pay attention, and goes back to those listening skills. And at the C-level executives, we don't know what their stressors are. There are some basics. They know they need to do basic security because that's the world we live in. But why you over somebody else? And by asking questions and listening, not to try and find a way to get your product in there, but to genuinely try to help them solve a problem. The best salespeople sometimes say, you know what? I hear what you're trying to do, and I'll be honest with you, we're not very good at that, but I'm going to put you in touch with somebody who is. That builds trust. I'll tell you a funny story with me. When I was starting my career, and I started I had a marketing consultancy. It was my first little business that I started. I remember coming from the advertising world where we would talk to clients and we would tell them we were great at everything when we weren't. And trust would very quickly deteriorate because they would find out very quickly that we were junk in something that we claimed we were good. We got the sale, good, but we destroyed the relationship. That's a short-term mentality. And I remember I decided I was going to change that. And I would go meet with clients and they wanted me to do all this work. And I'd say, okay, before we move on, I want you to know I'm extremely good at this thing that you want me to do. I'm pretty good at this thing you want me to do. I'm acceptable in this thing you want me to do. And I'm terrible at this thing you want me to do. So what I recommend is let me do these things and hire somebody else and I'll partner with them for these things. And the result was they actually wanted to work with me more because I was the only honest person in the room. All the other salespeople, all the other companies that they were interviewing said that they were great at everything, which everybody knows is a lie because nobody's great at everything. And so the irony is by admitting my weaknesses, I actually built trust and built better long-term business relationships.
Yeah, very good. I think it's a very good point, and I agree. Often that sales are, especially when they start, they try to say yes to everything and not necessarily expose where we are our weaknesses. And I think it's a good point. You can't be, as you say, it's a lie. We can't be good on everything. So and putting the emphasis where we have a very strong value, that may of course build this trust. So very good advice on this one. So I appreciate that. So. Maybe on another topics, which is more about, in our industry, we are facing a huge skill shortage. So it's like, unfortunately, the cyber crimes and the people they want to embrace cybersecurity journey are very limited. So we're talking about the gap about 2.7 million people. So it's massive, and that's worldwide. So we have few initiatives at Fortinet, on top of course, trying to sell product, but also try to push young generation or even veteran. We have a program in the US to embrace, in fact, cybersecurity job. So, and here in this context of recruitment, and retention, which is very big challenge for us, they're all very critical, and to address them, we need to drive engagement. And I would like to hear from you what engagements mean to you, or better said, how do you get your people love their job?
Right. So we don't have to like our jobs every day, but we do get to love our jobs every day. It's like you don't like your children every day, but you love your children every day. So having a hard day, that's fine. But the question is what do we fall in love with? And at the end of the day, the reason that we stay or leave a job is because of how we feel about that job. I think we misunderstand when we think people just leave for money. If they just leave for money, then they never really had strong feelings at the company in the first place, right? Because when people feel loyal to the company, they turn down jobs that offer them more money. Or if it's so tempting and the numbers are so high, then they go to their company and say, listen, I was offered this job. It's very tempting. There's a lot of pressure, but I don't want to leave. Is there anything you can do to help me stay? Right. So, there's the point is they're open about it. And what makes people want to have that conversation, like I said, is that they're seen and heard. The best companies have all kinds of programs inside the company to help the person grow as an individual. Now, we talked about, listening skills and these kinds of things. These are valuable for the work that we do, but it turns out that those skills also help us as parents. They help us as spouses or as boyfriends and as girlfriends. These are invaluable skills in life, and I think that we forget that. We talk about hard skills and soft skills as if those things are opposite. I hate the term soft skills. Hard skills and human skills. And the more that we invest in human skills, in addition to the hard skills that we're teaching, the more people feel like they're growing as individuals. I'm a better version of myself now than I was when I started at this company, because the company is actually helping me in personal growth. WD-40, which is a company that I admire their culture, the lubricant company. They train their managers to be coaches. So literally, like executive coaching training, that kind of thing, but they train their own people to have that skill set so that they're equipped to help their people who have challenges. And especially with younger generation, the younger generation is asking companies to provide everything. We want to have our sense of belonging, our sense of community, our sense of personal growth, our sense of purpose to come from work. It didn't used to be like that 40 years ago. And so there's a huge pressure on companies. And so I think what entices people into the company and into the industry is not just come and do cybersecurity. There's a percentage of people who are, de facto interested in that, but rather tell them the kind of experience they're going to have, tell them what they get from the company, and you'll find it remarkable how many people will all of a sudden be interested in the category in the company because of what they get holistically, not just what they get from the product.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. I think it maybe something that at Fortinet we're not necessarily doing a lot of communication, but we do see such of I would say dynamics, because in the IT industry, the average of, let's say, staying in companies is about like 3 to 5 years, and we have a lot of people that have been there from almost 10, 15 years. So it's not my case, but that's the best example. But so that's confirmed that when you get a company where there is an opportunity to grow, if there is, of course, option potentially to earn more, you're able to have a discussion, and then they, of course, if they see value, they can, of course, provide you the request. So I think that's what we're doing at Fortinet. Right. I don't think we're doing well on communicating to the employees or the culture, and we also try to on top of what people are doing we ask to do in terms of their job, if you sales or whatever pre-sales is. We also try to encourage innovation or initiative. So because that's on top of their job. So, and because we do see that the value is to get this from the ground and not just the top saying, okay, that's what you have to do. And I think we try to encourage this as more cultural aspect at Fortinet. Maybe something that
and we have to remember what gets measured gets done. We have to remember that I hear this all the time. Companies talk about we want we encourage our people to be innovative, and we encourage our people to look at problems differently and try new things. But when you look at the recognition and reward programs and structures, they only get recognized, reward, or incentivized based on hitting financial targets. And so for all the talk of what we want our people to do, if there's no formal recognition or rewards program that recognizes and rewards the behaviors, then you're only going to get the ones that are rewarded. And so, like I said, the best companies have a little more holistic approach. It's totally fine to recognize and reward for performance, but it needs to be balanced with some other attributes as well.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. I think we do a bit, but I don't think we're doing the best here. It's, of course, as we have to drive a public listed company, that's create a kind of a special pressure because it's more quarterly result and it's all about number. Investor looking about the bottom line and just metrics. So that's tend to drive management to listen more about shareholder and than listening from at least what they had at the initial think on, okay, we want to build this and we have more innovation. So I agree that often company, as we do, in fact, are trying to drive a bit more on the metrics, which find, aligning with the investor and not too much on creating this condition for an ongoing, I would say, growth and development. So which are more about rewarding people on innovation.
Right. Well, now you're giving me a soapbox, which is some 31-year-old, financial analyst who's putting pressure on the company to hit certain numbers doesn't care about the company. They care about their own bonus. And so, companies are making decisions to help some 31-year-old analyst get their bonus. It's as opposed to making decisions that are right for the company and right for the customer. And that's a whole different discussion. Some of the, there is a sea change that recognizes the pressure that Wall Street puts on companies isn't necessarily good for business. And the question is, well, how do we push back? How do we stand up to it? Again, part of it is the recognition and reward. Most senior executives are compensated, sometimes almost entirely based on the price of the equity. That's a different discussion. But one of the things that I've seen some of the more forward progressive thinking public companies are doing is they're still saying that they're shareholder driven, but what they're doing is they're looking at their shareholder base and they're bifurcating it. They're dividing it into two buckets, which is you have your short-term investors who they don't actually care about anything, your values, your purpose, nothing. If you're doing well, they invest in it. If you do badly, they dump you. They don't care. They don't believe in your management team, nothing. They're gamblers. And then you have your long-term investors who believe in the management team. They believe in the vision. When your stock takes a tumble or a misstep is made, they don't abandon you. They're there to support you because they believe in something. And so some of these more progressive thinking shareholder-driven companies are saying we're shareholder-driven by this group. We ignore this group because these are the ones who have been our partners, just like a good customer, just like a good employee. They're loyal. They help us through thick and thin. And so we do pay attention and want to support them. These ones they'll be there anyway if we do better. If the market goes up, they're there. If the market goes down, they abandon us. So why were we taking advice from them? So to think of your shareholders in two buckets, I think is a very good way forward. It's a very good first step.
I agree, and I think it's always as leading the company, the group of leaders, we need to make sure that we're driving in fact direction where it's more strategic and not just listening about these streets. And I think it's often difficult, but I think it's. If I refer to Fortinet, we have the two co-founders, which are, as my same age as me, and they're talking about what we'll do in 10 years, 20 years. So it's quite, I would say, unusual in this IT industry because often, they just want to cash out and then, okay, they care about themselves. And here in Fortinet, it's more about, long term. We're buying real estate, we're building, in fact, a new campus to really help, in fact, employees to enjoy the workspace. And so that's also maybe something that I think we do differently at Fortinet. Not necessarily communicating too well, but I think I hear at this the direction and what I think a good company should do. And I think we're doing a bit in this space. So, but I agree, the challenge about driving the street is also good because we do reward everyone. So we have kind of an equity that available for everyone. So everybody get a bit of a piece of this street reward. So, but on top we have we call it the 40 champ. So we have a quarterly kind of a review where we grant some prize for any idea, innovation, whatever you will be a sales admin, or you'll be an R&D guys, or be just like a receptionist. And so we really try to recognize, in fact, everyone. So we have this mechanisms that we do on a quarterly basis, but I think we should do a bit even more.
Love that.
So maybe next topic's about, we, as Fortinet, we just crossed 10,000 people. It's quite a company was started 2004, and that's quite a good milestone. And we have a very well balanced kind of people, because our revenue come, let's say, 40% from North America and the rest outside, which include Europe and Asia Pacific. So typically the population is very diversified. We have Japanese, Korean, Chinese, European, French, like me, and but I think it's about the overall IT industry, and I think we're doing overall the IT industry and Fortinet a bit. We're doing poorly on the gender diversity, and I think engagement also refer to inclusiveness, right? So Fortinet, we of course we try to commit on hiring, so setting kind of goal, but I think it's maybe the right approach. Promoting and retaining, of course, talented people at all levels in the sales organization, respecting, of course, the gender diversity. But as an example, we have the data prove that typically when you hire women sellers, when they are on the team, they are, the profitable business grow, innovation grows, and collaboration improves. So I think we can set target for hiring, but how can we help our leaders to recognize talented people, respect of diversity, and deal with it to drive the change?
Well, that's a loaded question, isn't it? If you have somebody in a leadership position who literally doesn't respect diversity and inclusion, the question is why are they in a leadership position? So it's a bit of a loaded question. Now, I understand the challenges. If you do things with intention, if there's an intention to go out and find something, you're more likely to find it. And I also think what companies with resources can do is build their own bench, which is go to universities, invest in the programs that will train the people, train, in this case, as you said, some gender diversity, so that they have the skills, and then and offer them the potential for jobs when they come through the program. So you set them up. In other words, build your own bench. Because I've heard this from companies before, which is, we'd love to, but the talent's not there. So go build the bench. If you have a long-term approach to this stuff, it's not about solving a problem in a month. It's about solving a problem so that it's sticky, so that it's not just a reaction, but rather it becomes inculcated and built into the fabric of the company. And I go back to leadership training again, which is what good leaders recognize is that a diverse workforce brings diversity of points of view. If everybody looks like me, went to a similar school as me, was brought up like me, then we're all going to have kind of similar points of view on some of the challenges we face. But when we have people with different racial backgrounds or different genders, some people who grew up in Europe versus America, or rich versus poor, they bring entirely new perspectives based on their worldview to a problem. And the more diverse perspectives we have on any challenge, it means the more options we have to solve that problem. And this is not surprising to me, that when you say when we have more diversity, we're actually better at the thing we're trying to do. That makes perfect sense. And so I think one of the things to do is for senior management to hammer away that this is essential for us, it's important for us, and that leaders are going to be expected to embrace this, that we're going to be judging our leaders and their ability to do this, to build more diverse teams, and to go out into the marketplace before some of these young people start looking for jobs, and start training them in the skills that you want. And setting them up. It goes to what we said before, which is we want to make you a whole person. We'll give you some of the technical skills and some of the human skills. And then when you join us, you're going to be a better prepared a better prepared employee to join our team, because we've already set you up for success with hard skills and human skills.
I agree. I think it's also may help on this I would say, finding the people, because of course, we think that maybe the right people are the people that has been getting the skill from the school or university specifically to the sector, but especially in this industry, you can have people they can quickly learn and they can really adapt, and then and of course try to bring different view, different go-to-market approach by the experience can also help to improve in fact the way you are engaging with customers. So I think it's something, and we do of course activity like I was mentioning that we have this veteran program in the US where we try to help them to find a new job. We have similar kind of initiative as well with the as we are part of the World Economic Forum. So, and here is about training. So we providing for free, so you can do it online, how to get the minimum and basic skill about cybersecurity, and then you can get this certification, and then you can potentially apply for a job anywhere in the world. So that's I think, and
fantastic.
I think it's really helping a bit on trying to enlarge a bit more, the audience, because at the end, cybersecurity is about securing the digital life that we're all going through. And and what I think what is missing here is that there is a bit of a when you go to school, or even your kids that are maybe at very young, it's not often where they can get the minimum skill about how to drive and live with this social media and digital life. So there is almost no expertise. So we're building a bit of books here to help young people, what's the right approach, what not to do, and of course at the end is trying to create a bit more vocation in this space, and that should help, and that's whatever the gender. So it's really trying to bring more different people across the world. And here,
I mean, again, I think building your bench is a great solution.
And here again, it's maybe slightly different than other industry, because it's like police, and we're fighting against crimes. So it's like you have really it's an ongoing process. You are, I would say, the good side to try to build, in fact, the protection for the customer, for yourself, in fact, to prevent, in fact, any big challenge that will be in the digital life. So it's really more this mission that at least people, when they are applying for the cybersecurity job, and especially for companies that have a long term, they can see on top of course, earning a pretty nice money. So it's maybe the why you are working for the company. So no, I think it's all, of course, a lot of very positive element here that, of course, help to drive the evolution of our business. So any maybe further, I would say, point that you want to give advice to my team and to the audience that listening about on those topics, on maybe specific area that you think makes more relevant?
Well, my latest obsession is this concept of finite and infinite games, and I've mentioned finite mindedness or infinite mindedness a couple of times while we've been discussing. This goes back to the mid-1980s. A philosopher and theologian by the name of Dr. James Carse defined these two types of games: finite games and infinite games. A finite game is defined as known players, fixed rules, and an agreed upon objective. Football. There's always a beginning, middle, and an end. And if there's a winner, that means there have to be losers. Then there are infinite games. Infinite games are defined as known and unknown players, which means new players can join at any time. And sometimes you don't even know who all the other players are. The rules are changeable, which means every player can play however they want. And the objective is to perpetuate the game, to stay in the game as long as possible. We are players in infinite games every day of our lives, whether we know it or not. Nobody wins education, for example. You can come in first for the finite amount of time you're at school when we agree upon the time frame, the school year, and we agreed upon the metric, grades. But nobody wins education. And likewise, nobody wins business. There's no such thing as winning business. It doesn't exist, right? But when we listen to the language of so many of our leaders, it becomes abundantly clear that they don't always know the game they're playing in. They talk about being number one, being the best, or beating their competition. Based on what? Based on what agreed upon timeframes, metrics, and objectives. And this is a problem, because when we play with a finite mindset in an infinite game, when we play to win in a game that has no finish line, there are actually some very predictable and consistent outcomes. The big one being the decline of trust, the decline of cooperation, and the decline of innovation. And so we actually have to adjust our mindset to fit the game that we're playing. And in the case of cybersecurity, you're actually trying to prevent crime from happening. The criminals aren't trying to beat you. They're just trying to do more. They're just trying to get more money. They're just trying to trick people. They just want access. They actually don't care about you and your cybersecurity. They're just trying to do more crime, right? It's an infinite game. And you don't even know who all the criminals are. There's no such thing as winning cybersecurity. It doesn't exist. It's an ongoing cat and mouse game. And so you have to have the right mindset for the game you're playing. And in this case, it's not about winning, it's about constant improvement. And it goes back to that analogy that we discussed right at the beginning when we talked about the lifestyle of business versus trying to treat it like a finite game, right? Which is, it's not the end of the financial year doesn't symbolize the end of the game. It's just a marker. It's just a waypoint. And so all of these things that you and I have been discussing is all about constant improvement. You'll never be perfect at any of it, ever. That's not the point. The point is that you're constantly working to advance, and you're constantly saying, how can we be better? How can we be better relative not only to the other players in the game, but also relative to the criminals in the game? Because you could be the best, quote unquote, compared to all of the other companies in the marketplace, but if the criminals are smarter than you, then there's no point.
Yeah.
So I think that's to adjust our mindset to play for the game we're in, which is the game of business, and especially cybersecurity, which really is an infinite game. I think is really, really important.
And having the people, so giving the time to continue to learn. So it's like, and that's what I'm saying to the team. It's like, it's an infinite game where you have to learn. You have to learn every day. It's a new fight every day. So it's always like this, normal curve about learning, and there's no age to stop learning. So I think it's really part of the how you can evolve yourself and being a better feeling here and so on.
Exactly.
So thanks. Maybe last point, which is maybe more about what we have all dealt during the last 2 years, and due to this COVID and pandemic, is really about, we're talking about the post era of COVID and coming maybe hopefully in a few months, and we have been, and most of our sellers have been, in fact, engaging virtually like we're doing right now, which is not necessarily the best. So I'd love to be in the same place as you. But you have been doing a lot. Of course, I saw your video, and also your Thank You Thursday. It's all a lot of the great value that create, in fact, the energy for people, especially stay at home. Any advice on how people should continue to evolve and prepare maybe for the post-COVID area?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a challenge that is now pervasive. One of the things we have to remember is that just because the business can function with a distributed workforce, with an online workforce, we know that there's a sacrifice. It's harder to build trust. If you've joined the company during COVID, you've never physically met any of your colleagues or coworkers. And it's much harder to build trust when we don't meet each other. We take for granted that when we go to the office, that the little brief interactions we have at work, where you walk past somebody in the hall and say hello, or the talk going into the meeting and the talk coming out of the meeting, and bumping into somebody and go, oh, I meant to tell you something, or do you want to grab a coffee? No one of these things by themselves does anything, but over the course of time, they contribute to the building of trust, to the building of human relationships. In an online context, we don't have any of the in-between. All we have is the meeting. We log on, we log off, that's it. And so what a lot of companies haven't recognized is that building trust online is possible, but it actually requires more work. What used to happen just relatively organically now has to happen prescriptively. So for example, I'm a huge fan of the Monday morning huddle. We do one on our team, where on Monday morning, the whole team comes together, and there's no discussion of work or deadlines or workloads or anything. It's a human call, where we simply say, what's on your heart and mind? And then we answer some funny or poignant question that's posed to us by the person who's leading the huddle that month. And we simply talk about ourselves. And you learn a lot about somebody. Somebody will say, oh, I had a great weekend with my kids, and we went hiking. I didn't even know that they had kids, Or somebody will say, to be honest, it was a really hard weekend. My father has cancer and he's in the hospital, and he took a turn for the worst. and we start to see each other as human, and we start to empathize, and we start to create relationship, and we start to get to know each other. But it's done prescriptively. We make it happen. I'm also a huge fan of turning on a Zoom, for example, and just working. Like, we're not actually working with each other. We're just in each other's screens as we're getting our own work done. It's nice to have somebody there. I'm also, believe it or not, a huge fan of the telephone. Zooms are tiring, especially when you have them all day. It's fake. Very often, I'm looking at a dot at the top of my screen so that you'll think I'm making eye contact with you, but really I'm just staring at the dot at the top of my screen. Or if I'm staring at you, sometimes the placement of the camera and the screens, what you see is this, but I'm looking right at your eyes,
Yeah.
And so I think a telephone, believe it or not, is actually a much better way to connect with somebody, especially when someone's distracted. When you can see that someone's doing email, while you're talking to them, there's no actual polite way to say, can you stop doing that and listen to me, please? And we just sort of do it. On a telephone, if you hear someone's distracted, you go, hello, you there? They go, sorry. You can actually catch people. And I find that those interactions, I'm a pacer. I like to pace when I'm on the phone, when I'm thinking. I can't pace on Zoom, which means my thinking is junk, right? When I'm on a phone call, I can walk around. I can walk around wherever I go, and I can talk to somebody, and I can be much more engaged. I think especially for salespeople, use the phone. Pick up the phone. How are you? Wanted to check in with you. Have a conversation without Zoom. I actually think it's actually much better for building relationship, believe it or not. Having Zooms occasionally is great too, but I think we've forgotten how good the phone is.
No, I agree, and I think it's we maybe have been abusing too much about this video conferencing. It's definitely a great that been a great value for be able to engage, and especially when you are not in the same place, because traveling was also the other challenge when you are doing this job. So you are able to at least capture potentially 30 minutes of a person that may not necessarily give you the time if it was normal, and then you have a normal meeting will take more. So there is a value, but on the other side, agree is not necessarily always very true. It's a bit fake. So so what we're doing here is also we try to help the overall selling people on leveraging what we call digital selling tools. So it's and that's a bit strange, because you feel selling was more like a human kind of interactions, but we discovered there's a lot of preparation about getting the insight from the customer that are leveraging, in fact, tools where people are going to the website, they choose some data or whatever, or connecting to your website, they look about some aspect of the business or product. So we're building that. And that's also a bit of a cultural, let's say, not clash, but evolution, because the old-fashioned people like myself never use that. Young people, millennials are more like, they are jumping on these kind of tools. And as you have to balance the team, it's, trying to bring everyone, taking a bit of value here. Why, as you say, taking the phone is also the great value.
And I think you're touching upon something that's really important, which is about balance, right? Which is, if the pendulum stays only with the old timers, then you're going to miss opportunities to be leveraged from the digital world. But if the pendulum swings too far to young people who are just really good at the digital stuff, then you end up making a commodity out of yourself, and you forget some of those valuable sales skills that are hard to teach in a classroom, but there's things that you learn over the course of a career. And so it's finding the right balance of those very human skills and that digital content. And the young have something to learn from the experienced, and the experienced have something to learn from the people who are looking at the world as a blank slate. And I think it's striking it'll never be perfect, but you want to play here rather than here. And so I think there's value in both.
I agree. I think it's a very good point. I think we, as we're looking hopefully a more positive outcome this year, I think we do encourage a lot on, we call it like fresher events. So we are trying to meet somewhere, whatever, and then having this kind of discussion that we have been missing for some time now. And as also we're doing a bit of a kind of sport sponsoring. It's also the place where I think you can get contact with people on completely different contexts. So it's not talking about business. They may be passionate by the sport that we are sponsoring, and it's a good way for engagement. So, really appreciate Simon. In fact, the discussion and the talk, really the exchange. I'm sure that all the people that will be listening will learn a lot. So that was very good. And we're coming a bit at the end of our conversation. I found it very educative, at least for myself. And I'm sure that all the great insight that has inspired our team and they are looking, in fact, to their job slightly differently. And I did mine already. So even I'm learning still today. And you made us understand even more the importance of the human element, in fact, in being our best at work, but also getting the feeling of fulfillment. So thank you so much, Simon, and for being with us today.
Thanks, Patrice. Thanks for having me. Good luck to everybody. Take care of yourself and take care of each other.
Thank you.